The blizzard swallowed everything: trees, sky, even the moon itself. Seraphine ran through the white void with nothing but instinct and terror guiding her steps. Blood dripped from the gash above her eyebrow, freezing against her skin almost instantly. Behind her, somewhere in that howling darkness, she could hear them, the hunters. Her lungs burned with each ragged breath, the frozen air like shards of glass in her chest. 3 days. She had been running for 3 days since escaping the Thornvale pack, since clawing her way out of that stone cellar where Alpha Kragan had kept her like livestock. "And Omega belongs to her pack," his voice echoed in her memory. "And you, little wolf, belong to me." Never again. Seraphine's bare feet, she'd lost her boots crossing the frozen river 2 nights ago, were numb beyond pain now. She stumbled over a hidden root, crashed through a snowdrift, and forced herself upright again. Keep moving, stop moving, and die. The wolf inside her whimpered, too weak from starvation and cold to be of any use. Omegas weren't built for this kind of endurance. They were healers, nurturers, the heart of a pack rather than its muscle. But Seraphine had no pack anymore. She had only herself. Through the swirling white, a shape materialized. Dark angles against the snow, a structure. Please, she prayed to whatever gods watched over broken wolves. Please let it be real. It was real. A cabin, ancient and weathered, built from timber so dark it seemed to drink the moonlight. Icicles hung from its eaves like crystal fangs. No light flickered in its windows. No smoke rose from its chimney. Abandoned. It had to be abandoned. Seraphine didn't hesitate. She threw herself against the door, her frozen fingers fumbling with the iron latch. It gave way with a groan of protest, and she tumbled inside, collapsing onto a floor of worn wooden planks. The silence was absolute. After 3 days of howling wind and snapping branches and her own terrified heartbeat, the quiet felt like a physical weight pressing down on her. Seraphine lay there gasping, waiting for her eyes to adjust to the darkness. The cabin was sparse but not empty. A fireplace dominated one wall, a heavy wooden table, shelves lined with jars, a bed piled with furs. But it was the scent that made her freeze. Beneath the mustiness of disuse, beneath the ash and old wood, there was something else. Something that made her wolf suddenly snap to attention despite its exhaustion. Alpha. Not just any alpha. This scent was ancient and commanding, saturating every surface as if the walls had been steeped in dominance. Dread coiled tight in Seraphine's stomach. "Get out!" Her instincts screamed, "Get out now!" But her body refused to obey. 3 days of running had left her with nothing. She couldn't feel her feet. Her fingers had turned a worrying shade of blue. If she went back into that storm, she would die before dawn. "I'll rest for an hour," she told herself, crawling toward the fireplace, just long enough to warm up. "Then I'll leave before whoever owns this place returns." She found kindling stacked beside the hearth, dry wood that caught easily when she struck the flint that hung nearby. As flames began to lick at the logs, warmth seeped into her frozen bones, and Seraphine felt tears streaming down her cheeks. When had she last been warm? She dragged one of the furs from the bed and wrapped it around her shivering body, huddling as close to the fire as she dared. The scent of Alpha surrounded her, strangely comforting despite her fear. Her eyelids grew heavy. Just for an hour, she promised herself again. Seraphine was already asleep when the door creaked open behind her, letting in a gust of frozen wind and the massive silhouette of a man who stopped dead at the threshold. His eyes, bright as molten amber, fixed on the small figure curled before his fire. An intruder. In his sanctuary. A place no wolf had dared enter in over a century. And she smelled of blood and fear and something else. Something that made his wolf rise to the surface with a possessiveness he hadn't felt in 300 years. Seraphine woke to the sensation of being watched. Her eyes snapped open, and for one disorienting moment she couldn't remember where she was. Stone cellar, Thornvale, running. Then the memories crashed back. The blizzard, the cabin, the fire that had now burned down to glowing embers, and the man standing motionless in the shadows across the room. Seraphine scrambled backward, her heart hammering against her ribs. The fur tangled around her legs, and she nearly fell into the dying fire before catching herself against the hearthstones. "Please," she gasped. "I didn't know anyone lived here. I'll leave. You'll stay exactly where you are." His voice was low and rough, carrying an authority that pressed against her like a physical force. Seraphine's wolf immediately dropped into submission, a response so instinctive she couldn't have fought it if she'd tried. The man stepped forward into the emberlight, and Seraphine forgot how to breathe. He was enormous, not just tall, but broad in a way that spoke of raw, brutal power. Dark hair fell past his shoulders, tangled and wild, framing a face marked by a scar that ran from temple to jaw. But it was his eyes that held her captive. Burnished gold with no trace of human brown or blue. Wolf's eyes in a man's face, fixed on her with an intensity that made her want to bare her throat in surrender. "What pack?" he demanded. Seraphine's mouth opened, but no sound emerged. She could feel his dominance radiating outward, could feel her wolf cowering inside her chest. "I asked you a question, Omega." He moved closer, and she pressed herself harder against the hearth. "What? Pack?" "No pack," she finally managed. "Not anymore." Something flickered in those amber depths. "Lone wolves don't survive these mountains, especially not." His gaze swept over her, taking in her torn dress, her bare feet wrapped in bloody rags, the gash on her forehead. "In your condition." "I survived 3 days," Seraphine heard herself say. A spark of defiance, foolish and small, but hers. His expression didn't change, but she could have sworn she saw the corner of his mouth twitch. "You stumbled into my territory half dead and collapsed in my cabin. That's not survival. That's luck. His territory. His cabin." "I'm sorry," she said quickly. "I didn't know. The blizzard. I couldn't see anything. I just needed shelter for—" "You're injured." It wasn't a question. Before Seraphine could respond, he was crouching before her, so close she could feel the heat radiating from his body. His hand reached toward her face, and she flinched. He paused. Those wolf-bright eyes searched hers, and something shifted in their depths. "I'm not going to hurt you," he said, and his voice had lost some of its edge. "Let me see." Seraphine held perfectly still as his fingers, surprisingly gentle for their size, brushed the hair away from her forehead. She felt him examine the gash, felt him trace its edges with careful precision. "This needs cleaning," he said. "And your feet." He glanced down at her makeshift bandages and his jaw tightened. "Who did this to you?" "I fell," she lied, "crossing the river." Those luminous eyes lifted to meet hers, and she knew immediately that he didn't believe her. But he didn't press. Instead, he rose and moved toward the shelves on the far wall, selecting jars and cloths with the ease of long familiarity. "What's your name?" he asked without turning around. "Seraphine." "Seraphine." He repeated it slowly, as if tasting the syllables. "I am Kaelin." Just Kaelin. No pack name, no title. But the way he carried himself, the power that saturated every inch of this place, Seraphine knew she was in the presence of something far more dangerous than a simple Alpha. He returned with a basin of water that steamed gently in the cold air, kneeling before her once more. "This will hurt," he warned. Seraphine nodded, bracing herself. But when he began to unwrap her feet, revealing the ruined flesh beneath, she couldn't stop the cry that escaped her lips. The skin was torn and blackened, frostbite creeping up from her toes. Kaylin's expression went terrifyingly blank. 3 days, he said quietly. "You walked 3 days on these." "I had no choice." "What were you running from?" The question hung between them, heavy with implications. Seraphine looked into those ancient, luminous eyes and saw something she hadn't expected. Not judgment, not suspicion, but recognition. As if he knew exactly what kind of desperation drove someone to destroy their own body for the chance at freedom. "A monster," she whispered. Kaylin held her gaze for a long moment. Then he began to clean her wounds with a tenderness that made her chest ache. As his hands worked, Seraphine felt something she hadn't experienced in years. Safety. But even as warmth spread through her frozen limbs, she noticed something else. A dark stain spreading across Kaylin's side, hidden beneath his heavy cloak. He moved carefully, she realized now, each gesture controlled, as if compensating for pain he refused to acknowledge. He was injured too. Before she could speak, a howl split the night outside, then another, and another. Kaylin's head snapped toward the door, his entire body going rigid. "They've found me," Seraphine breathed, terror flooding back. But Kaylin shook his head slowly, and when he turned back to her, his eyes had darkened to something ancient and deadly. "No," he said, "they've found me." The howls grew closer, circling the cabin like sharks scenting blood. Seraphine counted at least 7 distinct voices, a hunting party, coordinated and purposeful. Kaylin had risen to his feet, moving toward the door with the fluid grace of a predator despite whatever injury he was hiding. His hand closed around an iron bar that leaned against the wall, not a weapon so much as a reinforcement for the door. "Stay by the fire," he commanded. "Don't make a sound." "Who are they?" Seraphine whispered. "Wolves who want me dead?" He slid the bar into place with a heavy clank, which, lately, describes most of the realm. Most of the realm. The words sent a chill down Seraphine's spine that had nothing to do with the cold. What kind of wolf had enemies across entire territories? "Can you fight them?" Kaylin turned, and in the dying firelight she saw him clearly for the first time, not just his size and power, but the exhaustion carved into the lines of his face, the way he held his left arm slightly too close to his body. "Not tonight," he admitted. His jaw tightened, as if the confession cost him something. "I'm not at full strength." The howls fell suddenly silent, worse than the noise. Far worse. Seraphine's wolf began to whimper, sensing what was coming. A voice called from outside, muffled but audible. "Kaylin, we know you're in there. The council has pronounced judgment. Come out with honor, or we'll burn this relic down." Council. Judgment. Seraphine stared at Kaylin, pieces clicking into place with terrible clarity. The ancient power saturating this place. The eyes that never shifted to human. The way he'd said most of the realm wanted him dead. "You're not just an alpha," she breathed. Does it matter?" He cut her off. "In about 5 minutes I'll be a dead wolf either way." He moved toward the door, and Seraphine found herself on her feet despite the agony in her ruined souls. "Wait." She grabbed his arm. His injured arm, she realized too late, as he sucked in a sharp breath. "Sorry, but you can't just walk out there." "I won't let them burn down my sanctuary." His voice was steady, resigned. "This cabin has stood for 400 years. It's the last piece of—" He stopped himself. "It doesn't matter. Stay hidden. They have no quarrel with you. You're injured. Observant." Let me help. Kaelin actually laughed at that. A bitter, broken sound. You can barely stand, little Omega. What help could you possibly... He stopped mid-sentence, his nostrils flaring. Those amber eyes widened. What are you? He whispered. Seraphine felt heat rising to her cheeks. She hadn't meant to reveal anything, but her wolf, responding to his distress, had begun to push healing energy toward the surface. A soft glow emanated from her palms where they still gripped his arm. I'm an Omega, she said carefully. But my mother was... She had gifts. Gifts that passed to me. A healer. Kaelin stared at her hands as if he'd never seen anything like them. A true healer. They haven't existed in 2 centuries, Seraphine finished. I know. That's why my old pack... She swallowed hard. That's why I had to run. Understanding dawned in his eyes. Ugly, furious understanding. They were using you. It wasn't a question, and Seraphine didn't answer. She didn't need to. Outside, the voice called again. Last chance, fallen king. Surrender yourself, or... Can you heal me? Kaelin interrupted, his voice urgent now. Quickly. If I could fight at even half strength, I can try. But I've never healed an Alpha before. I don't know if... Try. Seraphine closed her eyes and let the power flow. It surged out of her like a river breaking through a dam. Golden light that wrapped around Kaelin's body, seeking out his wounds. She felt them as her own. 3 broken ribs, a deep puncture in his side, internal bleeding that had been slowly killing him. But beneath the injuries, she sensed something else. Power unlike anything she'd encountered. Vast and ancient. When her healing energy touched it, her wolf rose up with a howl of recognition. Mine. The thought came unbidden, shocking her so badly she nearly lost control of the healing. Kaelin made a sound deep in his chest, somewhere between a growl and a groan, and his hands found her waist, steadying her as she swayed. What are you doing to me? He rasped. Healing you. That's not... He sucked in a breath as another wave of golden light washed through him. That's not what this feels like. Seraphine opened her eyes and found his face inches from hers. His pupils had dilated until the gold was nearly swallowed by black. He was staring at her like she was something impossible, something miraculous, something his. The healing's done, she whispered, but neither of them moved. Seraphine. Her name and his voice did something strange to her insides. When this is over... The cabin door exploded inward. Kaelin moved like lightning, shoving her behind him as 3 massive wolves surged through the shattered doorway. He shifted mid-motion, bones cracking and reforming as he became something enormous and terrifying. A wolf the color of midnight, easily twice the size of the attackers. The fight was brutal and brief. Even outnumbered, Kaelin moved with devastating precision. Within minutes, 3 bodies lay, still on the cabin floor. But more howls were rising outside. Many more. Kaelin shifted back to human form, breathing hard but no longer favoring his injured side. He turned to Seraphine, and the look in his eyes made her heart stutter. There are too many, he said. We need to run. I can't... She gestured helplessly at her ruined feet. I can barely walk. Without hesitation, Kaelin swept her into his arms. She gasped, her hands flying to his shoulders for balance. He was warm, impossibly warm, and solid against her body. Hold on to me, he commanded. Don't let go, no matter what happens. Then he was running, bursting through the cabin's back window into the howling blizzard. Seraphine clutched tight against his chest. Behind them, the cabin of 400 years erupted into flames. They ran through the night. Kaelin carried her as if she weighed nothing, his long strides eating up the frozen landscape even as the blizzard raged around them. Seraphine buried her face against his neck, the only warmth in a world of ice, and tried not to think about the howls that pursued them. At some point, she couldn't tell when, the howls faded. The storm quieted, and exhaustion finally claimed her. Fragments of memory surfaced through her unconsciousness, being carried through howling wind, the rumble of Kaylin's voice speaking to others in a language she didn't recognize, the sensation of descending deep into stone. When Seraphine woke, she was lying on something soft in a place that was warm and dry, and most definitely not a frozen forest. She sat up slowly, wincing at stiffness in her muscles. The room was carved from stone, lit by flickering torches. A bed piled with furs, a small table bearing water, heavy curtains across what might have been a window. And in the corner, watching her with those unmistakable amber eyes, sat Kaylin. "Where are we?" Seraphine asked, her voice rough from disuse. "Somewhere safe." He unfolded himself from the chair and approached the bed. "You've been asleep for almost 2 days." 2 days? The healing you performed. He stopped himself, something complicated passing across his features. "It took more from you than you realized." Seraphine looked down at her hands, remembering the rush of power, the electric connection when her energy had touched his, the way her wolf had claimed him without permission. "Mine." She pushed the memory away. "I'm fine." "You nearly died." His voice was hard. "If I hadn't found the river cave when I did, the cold would have—" He cut himself off, jaw clenching. "You shouldn't have healed me. Not completely. You spent everything you had. You would have died if I hadn't." "So might you." He sat on the edge of the bed, closer than was proper, and Seraphine felt her breath catch. "Why would you risk that for a stranger?" "Because you looked at me like I was a person," she wanted to say. "Because you didn't treat me like property. Because when I touched you, something inside me recognized something inside you." "I don't know," she lied. Kaylin studied her face, and she had the uncomfortable feeling that he saw right through her deception. But he didn't press. "Your feet are healing," he said instead. "Another week, and you should be able to walk without pain." She threw back the furs and stared at the careful bandages, clean, obviously changed multiple times while she slept. "You tended them," she said, "while I was unconscious." "You're in my care. Of course I tended them." No one had ever cared for Seraphine when she was vulnerable. She felt tears prick at her eyes. "The wolves who attacked," she said, changing the subject. "They called you Fallen King." Kaylin went very still. "You heard that?" "I did." Seraphine watched him carefully. "What does it mean?" For a long moment he didn't answer. He rose from the bed and moved toward the torches, his back to her, shoulders rigid. "Nearly 4 centuries ago," he said finally, "I was crowned Alpha King of the Northern Territories. Every pack from the frozen peaks to the Ember Valleys answered to me. For 100 years I ruled without question. I was not a kind ruler. I believed in strength above all else." "What changed?" "I fell in love." The words hung in the air, heavy with ancient pain. "Her name was Alara. She was human." Kaylin's voice had gone soft, distant. "The packs didn't approve. A king mating outside his species, it was forbidden. When I refused to give her up, they rose against me." "What happened to her?" Silence. Then, "She was killed, along with our unborn child." Seraphine felt the words like a physical blow. "Kaylin." "I abdicated my throne that same night." He turned back to face her, and his eyes were no longer bright gold but a deep, hollow bronze. "I've spent 300 years in exile, watching the realm tear itself apart under a succession of weak kings and ambitious councils. I didn't care. I had nothing left to care about. But they're still hunting you. The current king is dying without an heir. Some on the council believe only a true-blooded Alpha king can restore order. Others would rather see me dead than let me reclaim what I abandoned. His laugh was bitter. They're all fools. I have no intention of taking back the crown. Seraphine absorbed this slowly. A king. An exiled king who had loved a human, lost everything, and spent centuries hiding in a frozen cabin. "Why are you telling me this?" she asked. Kaelin crossed back to the bed and knelt beside it, bringing his eyes level with hers. This close, she could see the flecks of darker gold in his irises, the fine lines around his eyes that spoke of centuries rather than decades. "Because when you healed me," he said quietly, "something happened. I felt it. I know you felt it too." Seraphine's heart began to pound. "I don't know what you mean." "Don't lie to me, Seraphine." His hand rose to cup her cheek, just as hers had done to heal him. "I've lived too long to be deceived. Your wolf called to mine. I heard it." She wanted to deny it. Wanted to pull away, to protect herself the way she'd learned to do in Thornvale. Instead, she heard herself whisper, "What does it mean?" "I don't know." His thumb traced her cheekbone, the touch feather-light. "I thought I would never feel this again. I thought that part of me died with Alara. Maybe you were wrong." The words escaped before she could stop them. Kaelin's eyes darkened. "Maybe I was." He leaned closer, and Seraphine stopped breathing. His lips brushed her forehead, gentle, questioning, giving her every opportunity to pull away. She didn't. Then a knock shattered the moment. Kaelin was on his feet in an instant, his expression shifting from tender to deadly in the space of a heartbeat. "Stay here," he commanded. "Don't make a sound." He was gone before she could respond, the heavy stone door sealing shut behind him. Seraphine sat alone in the torchlit chamber, her heart racing and her wolf howling with frustrated longing. What had almost just happened, and why did she desperately want it to happen again? Minutes passed, then hours. No one came. When Seraphine finally worked up the courage to test her feet, agonizing but manageable, and crept to the door, she found it sealed from the outside, locked in. A chill ran down her spine that had nothing to do with the cold. Why would Kaelin lock her in? Was she his guest? Or his prisoner? Through the thick stone walls she heard something that made her freeze. Voices. Many voices. Speaking in formal, ritualistic tones. And then, clear as a death knell, 3 words that changed everything. "The Omega stands accused." Seraphine pressed her ear against the cold stone door, straining to hear more. The voices were muffled but growing clearer, as if a crowd was gathering somewhere nearby. Trespassing in sacred territory. Unauthorized bonding attempt. The punishment is clear. Her stomach twisted with dread. They were talking about her. Whatever council or tribunal existed in this place, they had discovered her presence, and they were not pleased. The door groaned, and Seraphine stumbled backward as it swung open. But it wasn't Kaelin who stood in the doorway. A woman entered, tall and severe, with silver-streaked hair pulled back in a warrior's knot. Her eyes were the pale blue of glacial ice, and they swept over Seraphine with undisguised contempt. "So this is the stray," the woman said, "the little Omega who has caused such upheaval." "I haven't caused anything," Seraphine replied, finding her voice despite the fear clawing at her throat. "I was running from—" "I don't care what you were running from." The woman stepped closer, and Seraphine felt the weight of alpha dominance pressing against her. Not as overwhelming as Kaelin's, but powerful nonetheless. "What I care about is what you've done to our king." "Your king?" Kaelin said he abdicated. He said... The woman's laugh was sharp as broken glass. Abdicated? Is that what he told you? She shook her head. Kaelin Vorthane has been Alpha King of these territories for nearly 4 centuries. Exile doesn't change blood right. Nothing changes blood right. Vorthane. Even in Thornvale she had heard whispers of the Vorthane line, the oldest and most powerful Alpha bloodline in existence. I didn't know, Seraphine whispered. Ignorance is no defense. The woman grabbed her arm with bruising force. You will come with me. The council demands answers, and you will provide them. She was dragged through winding stone corridors, past guards and tapestries depicting ancient battles. This wasn't just a cave. It was a fortress hidden in the frozen mountains, a kingdom in exile. They emerged into a vast chamber lit by 100 torches. At its center stood a raised platform surrounded by 12 wolves in ceremonial robes. And there, standing before them in chains, was Kaelin. Seraphine's heart stopped. Chains. They had chained their own king. His eyes found hers across the chamber, and she saw fury there, not at her, but at the wolves who had brought her into this. He strained against his bonds, the metal groaning but holding firm. Release her, he commanded. She has nothing to do with this. On the contrary, an elderly wolf rose from his seat, his voice carrying the weight of absolute authority. She has everything to do with this. I am High Counselor Maren, Omega, and you stand accused of crimes against the realm. What crimes? Seraphine demanded, her fear transmuting into anger. I stumbled into an abandoned cabin during a blizzard. I didn't even know where I was. The cabin you speak of, Maren continued, is the sacred hearth of the Vorthane line. No wolf may enter without the Alpha King's explicit invitation. The penalty for trespass is death. Death. The word echoed in the sudden silence. She didn't know, Kaelin growled. I found her half dead on my floor. She was seeking shelter, nothing more. Then explain, another council member spoke, a younger male with cruel eyes. Why we sensed bonding energy emanating from that cabin. Why our seers reported the beginning of a mate bond between you and this nobody. Seraphine felt the color drain from her face. They knew. Somehow they knew about that moment when her healing had touched something deeper, when her wolf had reached for his. There is no bond, she said quickly. I healed him. That's all. He was injured, dying, and I... Healed him? Marin's eyes sharpened with sudden interest. You possess healing abilities? Too late, Seraphine realized her mistake. She had revealed the very thing that had made her valuable to Thornvale, the thing that had made her a prisoner rather than a pack member. I have some small skill with... She's a true healer, Draven interrupted, voice thick with greed. The genuine gift. The first in 200 years. Murmurs erupted. Seraphine saw the shift in how they looked at her. No longer a trespasser, but a resource. This changes things, Maren said slowly. A true healer bonding with the Alpha King. There is no bond, Kaelin repeated, his voice dangerous. And even if there were, it would be no concern of this council. Everything you do is our concern. The cruel-eyed counselor stood. You abandoned your throne for 3 centuries. Now the southern packs mass at our borders, and you hide in your cabin, mourning a human who died before anyone here was born. Kaelin's chains rattled as he lunged forward. Don't you dare speak of her? Why not? She's dead. Has been for longer than most wolves live. The counselor circled him like a vulture. But this one, he gestured at Seraphine. This one is very much alive, a true healer who has already begun bonding with you, whether you admit it or not. What are you suggesting, Counselor Draven? Maren asked carefully. Draven smiled, and Seraphine felt sick at the calculation in his eyes. I'm suggesting that fate has handed us a solution. The realm needs its king back. The king needs a mate to anchor him, to give him something worth fighting for again. He turned to face the full council. I move that we formalize what has already begun. Let the Omega complete the mate bond with Kaelin Vorthane, and let our king resume his rightful place. No. Kaelin's voice shook the very stones. I will not be manipulated into. You will do what is necessary for your people. Marin rose, and despite his age, his dominance silenced even Kaelin. You have hidden long enough, my king. The realm burns while you nurse ancient wounds. His gaze shifted to Seraphine. And you, Omega. You fled one pack only to stumble into another. Perhaps this is destiny. Destiny? Seraphine laughed, the sound brittle and sharp. You want to force me into a mating bond with a man I've known for days? That's not destiny. That's slavery by another name. You would refuse the Alpha King? I would refuse any wolf who tried to claim me without my consent. She lifted her chin, meeting Marin's eyes despite every instinct screaming at her to submit. I spent years as a prisoner in Thornvale. I will not trade one cage for another, no matter how gilded. Silence fell. The council members exchanged glances loaded with meaning. Thornvale, Draven repeated softly. You're from Kragan's pack. The name sent a visible ripple through the chamber. Seraphine saw recognition and something darker in several faces. Alpha Kragan has been demanding we return his property, Marin said. He claims a valuable Omega was stolen from him. He threatens war if she is not returned. Seraphine's legs nearly buckled. They knew. They had known all along who she was, where she had come from. I wasn't stolen, she said, her voice shaking. I escaped. He kept me locked in a cellar for 4 years. He used my healing gift too. We don't care about the internal affairs of lesser packs, Draven interrupted. What we care about is avoiding a war we cannot afford. And now we have 2 options. Return you to Kragan and maintain peace, or keep you here and risk conflict. Unless, Marin added quietly, you were mated to the Alpha King. Then you would be under royal protection. Kragan couldn't touch you without declaring war on the crown itself. A war he could never win. The trap closed around Seraphine with elegant precision. Refuse the bond, be sent back to Kragan. Accept it. Bind herself to a stranger, becoming a pawn in political games. She looked at Kaelin, still straining against his chains. He didn't want this either. But beneath the rage, she saw something else. Fear. Not for himself. For her. Don't do this, he said quietly. His words meant only for her. Whatever they threaten, don't sacrifice yourself. I won't let them send you back to that monster. I'll find another way. There is no other way, Draven said smugly. The council has spoken. The Omega will choose. Return to Thornvale or accept the mate bond. She has until dawn. Guards seized Seraphine's arms, dragging her toward a side door. Wait, she cried out, fighting their grip. Kaelin. Dawn, Marin repeated. Use the time to consider carefully, Omega. Your entire future hangs in the balance. The door slammed shut, cutting off her view of Kaelin's anguished face. Seraphine was thrown into a small stone cell, the door locking behind her with terrible finality. She collapsed onto the cold floor, her mind reeling. Dawn. She had until dawn to make an impossible choice. And somewhere in the fortress above, the only wolf who had ever shown her kindness was chained and powerless to help her. The hours crawled past like wounded animals. Seraphine sat in the corner of her cell, knees drawn to her chest, mind racing through options that led nowhere. Return to Kragan and face a lifetime of captivity, or worse, now that she had defied him. Accept a forced mating with Kaelin, binding herself to a stranger for political convenience. Neither choice was freedom. Neither choice was hers. But is he really a stranger? The thought surfaced unbidden. She remembered the gentleness of his hands as he tended her wounds, the way his eyes had softened when she told him she was running from a monster. The electric recognition when her healing power had touched his essence. Your wolf called to mine. I heard it. Seraphine pressed her palms against her eyes, trying to block out the memory. It didn't matter what she had felt. A mate bond forged under coercion was no bond at all. It was a chain disguised as love. A soft scraping sound made her head snap up. The wall beside her was moving. No, a section of it was sliding inward, revealing a narrow passage beyond. And emerging from that passage, moving with impossible silence for someone his size, was Kaelin. How? Seraphine scrambled to her feet. They had you in chains. They've had me in chains before. He stepped into the cell and she saw that his wrists were raw and bleeding, where he had torn free of the iron bonds. I know this fortress better than anyone alive. I built half of it. You shouldn't be here. If they catch you, then they catch me. He moved closer, and in the dim light filtering through the passage, his eyes burned with fierce determination. I won't let them force you into anything, Seraphine. I came to get you out. Her heart stuttered. Out? Out where? There are passages beneath the fortress that lead to the southern valleys. If we move quickly, we can reach neutral territory before dawn. You'll be beyond the Council's reach, beyond Kragan's, and beyond yours. The words fell between them like stones. Kaelin went still. Yes, he said quietly. Beyond mine. Seraphine stared at him, this ancient king offering to lose something she could see in his eyes that he desperately wanted to keep. Why? She whispered. Why would you help me escape when the Council is offering you exactly what they think you need? A mate. A reason to reclaim your throne. Because I don't want a mate who was coerced. His voice roughened. Because I know what it feels like to have choice taken away. Because... He stopped, jaw clenching. Because what? Because what I feel for you is real. The admission seemed to cost him something vital. I've tried to deny it. Told myself it was just the healing energy, just proximity, just loneliness after so many years. But it's not. When I look at you, I see something I thought I'd never see again. What? Hope. The word hung between them, fragile and profound. Seraphine felt tears burning in her eyes. Kaelin. But hope means nothing if it's built on force. He reached out, his bloodied hand cupping her cheek with heartbreaking gentleness. I want you, Seraphine. My wolf wants you so badly it's tearing me apart. But I want you to choose me freely, or not at all. She leaned into his touch, and something broke open inside her chest. What if I already have? She heard herself whisper. What if my wolf chose you the moment I touched you? What if I've been fighting it because I was too afraid to believe it could be real? Kaelin's breath caught. Seraphine. The Council thinks they're forcing us together. She covered his hand with her own, pressing it harder against her cheek. But what if they're just giving us permission to do what we already wanted? You don't know what you're saying. The mate bond. It's permanent. Unbreakable. You would be tied to me for the rest of your life. I know. She met his amber gaze without flinching. I spent years being tied to wolves who saw me as property. Maybe it's time I chose to be tied to someone who sees me as a person. Something shifted in Kaelin's expression. Wonder and hunger and a desperate, aching hope. You would truly choose this? He breathed. Choose me? I'm choosing myself, Seraphine corrected softly. and you happen to be what I want." For a moment, neither of them moved. The cell was silent except for their mingled breathing and the distant drip of water somewhere in the stone passages. Then Kaelin kissed her. 3 centuries of loneliness poured through that kiss. His arms wrapped around her, lifting her against him, and Seraphine gasped as sensation overwhelmed her. Her wolf surged to the surface. Yes. Finally. Ours. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Seraphine saw that Kaelin's eyes had gone fully gold, his wolf barely contained beneath the surface. "The bond," he said roughly. "If we complete it now, before dawn. The council can't force what's already done. It won't be gentle." His hands were shaking where they gripped her waist. "The claiming. I've been holding back for days. If I let go, then let go." Seraphine tilted her head, baring her throat in the ancient gesture of surrender. Kaelin made a sound that was more wolf than man. His mouth found the curve of her neck, teeth grazing sensitive skin, and Seraphine felt power building between them, her healing gift rising to meet his alpha essence, 2 energies spiraling together into something new. "Last chance," he growled against her pulse. "Tell me to stop." "Don't you dare?" His teeth sank deep. Pain and pleasure exploded through her, so intertwined she couldn't separate them. She felt the bond snap into place, felt Kaelin's presence flood into her mind, her heart, her soul. His emotions crashed over her: possessive love, desperate relief, fierce protectiveness. "Mine," his wolf proclaimed. "Yours," her wolf answered. "Always." When his teeth withdrew, Seraphine slumped against him, trembling with the aftershocks. She could feel him inside her now, not physically, but essentially. A constant presence at the edge of her consciousness, warm and strong and irrevocably hers. "It's done," Kaelin murmured against her hair. "You're mine, and I'm yours. Nothing can undo it." "Good." She lifted her head, meeting his eyes. "Now it's my turn." His brow furrowed. "Your turn?" "A true mate bond goes both ways." Seraphine rose on her toes, her lips finding the spot where his neck met his shoulder. "You marked me. Now I mark you." She felt him shudder beneath her touch. "Seraphine, you don't have to." She bit down. The power that surged through her was unlike anything she'd experienced. A claiming, a possession, a declaration. She tasted copper and pine and snow, tasted centuries of loneliness dissolving into fierce connection. Kaelin's arms tightened around her, and the sound he made was pure wolf. When she released him, they stood wrapped around each other, both marked, both claimed, both irrevocably changed. "The council," Seraphine said breathlessly. "They'll know what we've done." "Let them know." Kaelin's smile was sharp and dangerous. "Let them try to separate us now." As if summoned by his words, footsteps echoed in the passage beyond the cell. Torchlight flickered, and voices rose in alarm. "They've found us," Seraphine whispered. "They've found their queen," Kaelin corrected. He released her only to take her hand, threading his fingers through hers. "Stand with me?" Seraphine squeezed his hand and felt his answering pulse of love through the bond. "Always." The council chamber erupted into chaos when Kaelin and Seraphine entered together. Guards scrambled for weapons. Counselors leaped to their feet. High Counselor Marin went pale as he took in the matched bite marks on their throats, fresh and undeniable. "Impossible," Draven snarled. "The Omega was secured. How I reached my mate is irrelevant." Kaelin's voice rolled through the chamber like thunder, and every wolf present felt its weight. He had changed since the cell, no longer the reluctant exile, but something older and more terrible. A king reclaiming his crown. What matters is that the bond is complete. Seraphine Vorthane stands under my protection as Alpha Queen. Vorthane. Seraphine heard the name with wonder. His name. Now hers. This is outrageous. Draven spat. A forced bonding. There was no force. Seraphine stepped forward, releasing Kaelin's hand to face the council directly. Her wolf stood tall within her, strengthened by the bond, no longer cowering before alpha dominance. I chose this freely. Every word, every action, every bite, mine. You expect us to believe? I don't care what you believe. She met Draven's eyes without flinching. I am Seraphine Vorthane, mate to the Alpha King, and you will address me accordingly. Silence. Absolute stunned silence. Kaelin moved to stand beside her, and Seraphine felt his pride flowing through the bond, warm and fierce, and utterly devoted. The council demanded a choice, he said. A choice was made. Now we face a different question. What happens next? What happens next, Marin said slowly, recovering his composure, is that Alpha Kragan learns his escaped Omega is now mated to the Northern King. He will not take this well. Kragan can rot, Seraphine said flatly. He kept me in a cellar for 4 years. He used my gift to heal his warriors while treating me worse than livestock. Whatever response he has, I've earned my freedom from it. Your freedom may cost us a war. Then let war come. Kaelin's eyes blazed gold. I've watched from the shadows for 3 centuries while lesser alphas carved up territory and brutalized their own people. I told myself it wasn't my concern anymore. I was wrong. He turned to address the full council, and Seraphine saw the warriors and nobles straighten instinctively, responding to an authority they had been waiting 300 years to feel again. I abandoned this realm when I lost my mate and child. I thought there was nothing left worth fighting for. His hand found Seraphine's again. I was wrong. If Kragan wants a war over the woman I love, he'll have one. And when it's over, every alpha who treats Omegas as property will answer for it. Murmurs rippled through the chamber. You speak of reform, Marin said carefully. Of challenging traditions that have stood for millennia. I speak of justice. My mate ran through a blizzard on frozen feet for the chance at freedom. This is happening everywhere. It ends now. And if the Pax refuse to change, then they'll answer to their king. Kaelin's smile was winter cold. I've had 3 centuries to regret my abdication. I won't spend another 3 watching the realm tear itself apart. Draven opened his mouth, probably to object, but a voice from the chamber's entrance cut him off. Touching words, Vorthane, but you'll have to survive the night first. Every head turned. Standing in the doorway, flanked by warriors, was Alpha Kragan of Thornvale. He was exactly as she remembered, thick-bodied and brutal. The smile that crossed his face made her stomach heave. There you are, little healer. You've caused me trouble. Seraphine felt Kaelin's rage explode through the bond. He stepped in front of her, body already shifting. You dare enter my fortress? Your fortress? Kragan laughed. You've been hiding for 300 years. This realm stopped being yours when you ran crying over your dead human. The temperature dropped. Frost formed on nearby torches as Kaelin's power surged. Say that again, he whispered. Gladly. Your human horde died screaming. My ancestor was there. The memory passed down through generations. Kaelin attacked. The shift was instantaneous. Man to midnight wolf of impossible size. He hit Kragan like an avalanche, and the chamber dissolved into chaos. Warriors clashed, council members scattered. Seraphine pressed herself against a pillar as the 2 alphas tore at each other in a whirlwind of fangs and claws. But Kragan had come prepared. Through the melee, she saw him pull a blade that gleamed with oily iridescence, the same silver-black poison she had healed from Kaelin's body. Kaelin! She screamed. The knife! too late. Kragan plunged the blade into Kaelin's side. The great black wolf staggered, a sound of agony tearing from his throat. Seraphine felt the poison through their bond, cold and wrong, spreading through his body like frost through veins. No, not again. I won't lose him too. Power erupted from her without conscious thought. This wasn't the gentle golden healing she had used before. This was Omega power, amplified 1,000-fold by her connection to the Alpha King. Light blazed through the chamber, so bright that wolves cried out and shielded their eyes. Seraphine walked through the chaos untouched, toward where Kragan stood over Kaelin's fallen form. "Get away from my mate." Her voice echoed with harmonics that weren't human, weren't entirely wolf either. Something older, something primal. Kragan turned, and for the first time she saw fear in his eyes. "What are you?" he whispered. "I am an Omega." Seraphine stopped before him, light still pouring from every inch of her body. The heart of the pack, the healer, the nurturer. For too long, wolves like you have treated us as weaknesses to be exploited. She raised her hand, and Kragan screamed as invisible force drove him to his knees. "You were wrong." She knelt beside Kaelin's shuddering body, placing her glowing hands over the poisoned wound. Through the bond, she felt his life force flickering, felt the corruption trying to consume him. "Stay with me," she commanded through their connection. "I didn't choose you just to lose you." "Trying," came his weak response. "Hard to?" Seraphine poured everything into the healing, not just her power, but their bond, the love that had grown despite impossible circumstances. Golden light battled corruption, and slowly the poison retreated. Around her, council guards subdued Kragan's warriors. Thornvale's Alpha was dragged away in chains. Finally, the last traces of poison dissolved. Kaelin shifted back to human form, gasping, his hand finding hers and holding tight. "You saved me," he breathed. "Again." "That's what mates do." Seraphine slumped against him, exhausted but triumphant. "Or so I'm told." His laugh was weak but real. He pulled her close, pressing his lips to her forehead. Around them, the council chamber slowly returned to order. Wolves emerged from cover, staring at Seraphine with expressions ranging from awe to fear. "The Omega," someone whispered. "Did you see what she did?" "True healer," another voice answered. "Bonded to the king. She's as powerful as a queen should be." Marin approached and knelt. "My king, my queen." Forgiven old wolf's blindness, fate knew what it was doing. One by one, counselors knelt, then guards, then warriors. Seraphine watched in stunned silence as the entire chamber bowed before her and Kaelin. "Looks like you're stuck with me," she murmured. "Looks like you're stuck with a kingdom." Kaelin's arm tightened around her. "Any regrets?" Seraphine thought about the cellar in Thornvale, the frozen blizzard, the cabin, the choice she had made in a stone cell, thinking she was surrendering her freedom, only to discover she was claiming it. "Not one," she said. Kaelin smiled, a real smile, warm and wondering, transforming his scarred face into something beautiful. "Neither do I." Outside, dawn was breaking over the frozen peaks, painting the snow gold and rose. A new day, a new beginning. And somewhere in the distance, a wolf howled in celebration. Their queen had come home. Thank you so much for listening. I hope you enjoyed the story. A big thank you to everyone who's following. Your support truly means the world to me.